We have a unique guest in the Cafe DC today, Shahan Mufti, who calls himself 100% Pakistani and 100% American. How is that possible? Well, he was born in America and pretty much grew up in Pakistan, came back and started teaching and writing for some international publications. He's with us, and we'll start talking to him about his career and his book that he has written about his family and the history of Pakistan. Shahan, thank you very much for joining us.
It's great to be with you, Faiz.
Okay, well, can you answer my first question? How's that, 100% Pakistani and 100% American?
Well, I think the product of the two is greater than the whole in some ways. I was, like you said, I was born in the United States. My father was a professor at a university here when I was born. And, but then I moved back to, my family moved back to Pakistan when I was quite young. And I spent almost a decade living in Pakistan before returning to the United States. I say in the book that if I was to sit down and count it all, I might realize that I've spent exactly the same amount of time equally in Pakistan and the United States.
How old are you?
I'm 32.
Okay.
So I would say 16 years in each place,
good.
Probably, but I haven't counted it all yet.
Good. Well, this is your book, and let me just, take a close-up of this book, The Faithful Scribe. And I have gone through this book, and it's very interesting. It's an interesting account, and the way that you have chosen to describe the history of Pakistan through all these ups and downs is through your family history, your mom, dad, how your even grandparents lived in Punjab, in Lahore, how your dad moved here, became a professor. So why did you choose this format?
Well, this was very purposeful. Right at the beginning of this book, I opened the book with a prologue in which I addressed the reader directly. And my aim in this book was really to, since I am between these two worlds, I live between Pakistan and the United States, I'm constantly traveling between both countries. I felt like I had a special view on things. I had a special perspective that maybe not everyone has. And it was for that reason that I felt like I needed to tell this story, that especially in these times when we have this conflict in the region in which America is very involved, and Pakistan and the United States are involved in each other's affairs so deeply. So I felt like I had the need to tell this story as I was seeing it, this relationship between Pakistan and the United States, but also the story of Pakistan, and I wanted to tell it to Americans. It just so happened that the story of my family, and because my family had traveled between these two worlds so often and had lived in and had split their time in between these two worlds so often. And I found that many generations of my family had actually done that. Not just my grandfather, but in the colonial times I found that my ancestors who were under British colonial rule were in some ways split between West and East. So I found that there's many generations of my family which had lived between these two worlds. So I decided why not tell the story through them, because at the end of the day, I believe as a storyteller and as a journalist that all of us want to hear stories of other people. We are interested in the stories of other human beings. And that's in some ways the most universal way to tell the story.
So I see basically what I see in the book, it's not just a story about Pakistan or about your family, it's also about America, the United States, your experience here when you were going to college, these towers were coming down, and you were at the campus in Vermont,
yes,
right, in the state of Vermont, yeah. And then the experience that you went through. Share some of those thoughts, some of those experiences. You were young, like not even 22,
yeah,
in your 20 years old. So what was it like being an American, and then again seeing all this, in real time?
Yeah.
And also getting reaction and feedback from your fellow students.
Absolutely. I was, on that day, that's in some ways the point of departure in this book. So the events of September 11th happened right at the beginning of the book. And I actually begin the story in that sense right the day after. I was in my college campus, I was in my dorm room that morning, on the morning of September 12th. And I got a phone call. in my dorm room, and I knew it was an off-campus call because in my college campus, if it was somebody calling you from inside the campus, it would be 1 ring. But if somebody was calling you from the outside, it would be 2 rings. So the phone rang.
Back then, they didn't probably have the IDs.
And there were no cell phones
Yes.
either. I didn't have a cell phone.
Wow, just like a few years ago.
No, it's not very long ago, but that was how it was. But so I knew it was an outside, off-campus call. And I picked it up, and the person introduced themselves as a federal agent with tobacco, firearms, firearms, tobacco, and alcohol. And they just had called my phone number at my college campus, and they wanted to know how I was. There wasn't anything specific they asked me, but I knew that I had attracted attention. And like I said, I'd lived between America and Pakistan enough that I never really felt like an outsider in Pakistan or in the United States. I've never felt like an outsider. But when that day, the day after September 11th, I did, for the first time perhaps, feel like I had been pinpointed for some reason. And that's the point of departure in the book, is that sets me on this journey, on this path, to explore where my family comes from. And I felt like it was maybe my name, Mufti, that was the reason that I had been identified in a phone book maybe. Or somehow that Mufti had attracted attention. And I found that, and then I went back, and obviously I traveled through India and I traveled through Pakistan and exploring my family's own roots. And I found that there were Muftis, that some of my ancestors had been Muftis in the Mughal courts. And that on my mother's side, actually, my mother's side of the family is a Qazi. And so I found that
Qazi and Mufti.
Qazi and Mufti. And so on both sides of the family, my ancestors had actually been part of the Islamic bureaucracy of the Mughal Empire, and before that of the Ghaznavid Empire. So I found this a fascinating history of in which it wasn't just about Pakistan, or it wasn't just about this region of the Indus, but it also in many ways was about Islam and Islamic bureaucracy and Islamic institutions. And I found in the story of my family how these Islamic institutions had risen and fallen and then were rising again in some ways. So you're absolutely right that this story became larger than just about Pakistan as a political entity. It also became about Pakistan as an Islamic state, as an Islamic republic.
So America, so that day, to be fair, I mean, not every Pakistani American or not every American of Pakistani descent got a call from anybody. So, and in your book, you did seem to describe or suspect that maybe it may have been a prank call. Somebody just, thought about you and a friend. And just, and actually it did happen to one of my friends when I was in Los Angeles. Yeah, he got a call, but that friend told him that, because he freaked out.
Yeah.
So a lot of jokes were played on each other. Those are ironic times, but it's.
And even in my college campus, I mean, I just got a phone call, but I had friends who were Pakistani, who were actually who had traveled and were on visas, on educational visas, and they were actually questioned in person as well on the college campus by federal agents. So this was it was a time of everyone was very afraid, and everyone was reevaluating their place in the world. I mean, in these most basic ways, but also in some fundamental ways, we were all questioning of why these things happened. And in the process, a lot of Pakistanis were, and we know there was an exodus of Pakistanis from the United States as well in the months that followed. I wasn't in that place. Again, I was an American. I was born in the United States. I felt American, and I felt Pakistani, and these things had never been a conflict.
Yes, exactly.
And so, but there were many other Pakistanis who suffered the events of that day a lot more than I did.
Shahan, you describe yourself a journalist. You don't just describe yourself, you do a lot of journalism. You have written for very prestigious publications, newspapers, and now you teach. So I know writing a book comes naturally to you. I mean, it's an extension, it's a natural extension of your overall experience as a journalist and as a teacher. But when you set on this course, for writing a book, why did you think of something about your own family? There are Pakistani American scholars who have written books on so many different subjects and topics. For them, even though you had a different background, but a lot of even second generation Pakistanis like yourself, They have their parents here. They have gone to colleges and stuff. So why did you write about this particular subject? What was your inspiration?
Well, like you said, I'm a journalist, and I've always naturally been attracted to real stories. So real people's real stories, true stories. And in some ways, I think those are the most fascinating ones. Is in some ways reality is stranger than fiction even. I think as far as the literature about Pakistan goes, on Pakistan goes, especially in the English language, of late we've had a lot of very good fiction about Pakistan come out, which is being widely read in Pakistan, but even more widely read in the West, in the United States. So we have great Pakistani fiction writers like Daniel Muinuddin and Mohsin Hamid and Muhammad Hanif, and there's a lot of very popular novels that have come out. And on the other end, we've had non-fiction books come out by policymakers. And
Akbar Ahmed
has written
a few books,
exactly, and Ahmed Rashid as a journalist, he's written some very books that have been read very widely. But what I saw was missing was in that area in the middle, that world in the middle of what is called narrative nonfiction, which is real stories but told as a story, not necessarily told as a political lesson, but instead stories of real people living. And this is, in some ways, in an American tradition of journalism, in narrative nonfiction, and that is, I guess, my inspiration for this, is to tell the story of Pakistan through the stories of real life people with real
you chose your family history as a vehicle of this narrative about Pakistan, and since it's a narrative about Pakistan, of course you also covered these dictators, military dictators, and the first one is, of course, Field Marshal Ayub Khan. But he's been described in somewhat, very flattering way. You go back to your mother's, youth, her romance with the idea of Pakistan, and then right before, when she was about to get married, Pakistan gets attacked, or the war started. And then you go back to the Ayub Khan's era, and you describe that your mom was basically, in love with the dictator. But from a distance, it seems as if this narrative seems not too critical of these dictators, including Musharraf. Musharraf's pictures with his dogs and stuff, all in there. So did you ever think of maybe also putting some other stuff about these people who?
No, it's absolutely true. And once again, you're right that my parents were were married on the 4th of December 1971, which was the first day of the Indian attack on West Pakistan at that time. And so Lahore came under attack that day that they were trying to get married in Lahore. But you're absolutely right that period. So what I've done in this book is I've covered the different periods of Pakistan's history, but through real people's lives. Sometimes they're my parents, sometimes grandparents, sometimes distant relatives, but all through the stories and lives of people. You're absolutely right. When I talk about the period of General Ayub Khan, that period of the story is told through my mother's eyes, and she was a huge supporter of Ayub Khan. She was a college student. She felt like that was her view at that time. I've tried to stay true to. I've not always agreed. I never, in my journalism even, I don't always agree with what stories I'm being told and in the points of view of the people I'm writing about. But I always try to be respectful to the source of my story. And that part of the story is told through my mother's view, so it seems, I would imagine that maybe to a reader, it seems more flattering of General Ayub Khan. But at the same time, my father's views are also there, and my father was not necessarily as supportive of General Ayub Khan and has different political points of views. So at the end of the day, but I think that at the end of the day, this really is reality. this is the reality of it. And people aren't all bad and all good, and not all people support one political leader and all are against one political leader. The reality is always in the middle. It's messy, and it's some people support someone and the other people don't. Sometimes they are married.
What's your own assessment as a journalist, and because you have a unique perspective, you have a bird's eye view as an American on Pakistan, and someone who's also who goes back and forth, and you have experienced real Pakistani life as well.
Yeah.
So what's your take of all these military regimes? What do you think that they have done to the polity of Pakistan?
I think Pakistan is a very interesting country politically. In this story, what I try to tease out is one thing that I do try to tease out is Pakistan, the nature of Pakistan being founded as the world's first Islamic republic, which is a very important issue even today to the world, because there are many other countries right now that are trying to write Islamic constitutions, that are just starting to, countries like Egypt, that are just trying to write constitutions now, Islamic constitutions, which Pakistan did decades ago, almost 70 years ago, 60 years ago. So that is one part of Pakistan that I've tried to explore in this book, is why did Pakistan become an Islamic republic? Why did it become the world's first Islamic republic? Why did it write the world's first Islamic constitution? But the other part that I'm trying to explore in this book that I do is this idea of democracy, and Pakistan being founded as a democracy.
Exactly.
And this is something that was, in a way, is trying to mix the ideas of Islam with democracy. The military rules have been a huge challenge to this.
Why? Because the idea didn't quite work.
Well, I mean, well, I don't. That's the thing, is that Pakistan, when we're talking about Pakistan, it is the first experiment in Islamic democracy. So I don't think people recognize that, sometimes give Pakistan enough credit for that. That here's a country that decided to mix the idea of democracy in Islam and create an Islamic constitution and create an Islamic democratic constitution and an Islamic republic and democracy. So that's what I feel like, that sometimes Pakistan's, these shortcomings of Pakistan are in a way almost natural and expected if a country has no format to follow. It was the first country that tried this, and it has suffered. In some ways, the experiment is still ongoing. But one thing that, as far as the military rules go, I think that, again, one thing that's not paid enough attention to perhaps is that Pakistan also has a knack of overthrowing military rulers more often than any other country. So these military rulers come to power in Pakistan, but then every so often they have to resign. We compare that to some other countries in Latin America, we compare that to countries in the Middle East, where a single dictator is able to rule for decades upon decades upon decades. And that's where I think Pakistan's democratic roots, Pakistan's foundation and the seeds of democracy and of pluralism that are in Pakistan, that's where I think that comes into play.
Shahan, your book has received lavish reviews by some very prominent personalities as well as publications. Ryan Crocker, a former ambassador to Pakistan, I mean, he has written, if you want to understand Pakistan and the Pakistani-American relationship, read this book. So this is quite a statement. So when you were writing this book, did you have this aim in mind that you want to help this relationship as well? Sometimes sour, it's a roller coaster kind of a relationship. So
I think it's, I don't know if I don't want to sound like I was on a diplomatic mission here. My mission wasn't to cover up certain things and to present certain images of the other place that are good or nice. My mission as a journalist was really to really be frank in describing Pakistan and be upfront, and because I think in some ways that's what's lacking most. In some ways, the problem between Pakistan and the United States, the seed of the problem, is that there is misunderstanding, and there's an inability to understand where the other one is coming from. So in that sense, maybe my mission was to help this relationship, but I think I want to help this relationship by being extremely frank about where Islam and Pakistan and the United States and democracy, where all these things come together, and how all these things are connected, and how the faiths of all these people living in these countries are
Shahan,
connected.
we're a little short on time, but I do want you to shed some light on this idea that you have discussed in your book, the separation of church and state. And you said Pakistan is very unique because in Islam there is no church. So can you please tell us something about that concept? Why do you think Pakistan hasn't been successful, quote unquote, from the Western perspective in separating a religion from the state?
Yeah, and from the Western perspective is
Yes.
the key here, is because this is often a criticism. This is less so in Pakistan, but I mean it exists in Pakistan as well, but this is often a criticism that comes from the West, which is that in Islam, not just in Pakistan, but in Islamic politics, there's not a clear separation between church and state. And this is a criticism that exists. But the way, I mean, I've tried to tackle that in this book. And I do talk about that when we start talking about church and state, we are talking about, necessarily talking about a paradigm or a way of thinking that comes from the West, well, comes from from Christendom. There is no church in Islam. And this, so if we're going to be talking about separating anything from the state, it can't be a church. So what is it that we want to separate from the state when we talk about a concept of an Islamic democracy? This is
When
tricky.
you say church, it means no hierarchy, no religious hierarchy.
No institutional hierarchy the
Right.
way it existed.
Like in Roman Catholicism. Yes.
Exactly. And that is what allowed Western democracies to separate those two, because they were very specific institutions. The church was an institution. The mosque is not a similar institution. A mosque is a physical
Yes.
space.
Yes.
It's not it has to be a physical space. So you can't talk about disconnecting the mosque and the state, because the mosque and the state are separate. But so the point in my discussion of this was that it's not that easy as we like it to think, and that Islam is connected with the political tradition and history in ways, and in some ways the history of people. And that's why I talk about my family and the muftis and the qazis, and these are Islamic institutions. And these are connected with the histories of people and the state in ways which are not as easily separable.
Well, Shahan, I wish we could go on and on and on. Such an interesting topic. Great book, by the way. Ladies and gentlemen, Shahan Mufti and his book. I don't know if you can buy this book in Pakistan, but I'm sure you can order this through Amazon.com. And you can also find more details about this book and this program on our website, urduvoa.com. So please don't forget to visit. And also don't forget to watch our next program on the same place, same time. I thank you for watching this wonderful program, and thank my guest Shahan Mufti to be here with us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.